In a world where nostalgia and wonder abound, folks flock together admiring the mighty, the marvelous, the super. Have you pondered how to begin your wanderings of the nerd realms? Well, hot dame! Welcome to the Dame Patrol. Your vigilant Mrs. 3 are here delivering the news, cues, and reviews from across the geek world. Get a move on, gals. Your vigil has begun.
Hey, howdy, hey, welcome back, you guys, to the Dame Patrol. We are your misses, and we are talking about our continuing topic of Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. In our previous episode, you heard all about the review of what we felt and the themes of Wreck-It Ralph. There's a lot of deep filios in there. But in this episode, we are actually getting down and dirty and learning all about the production notes. The great dame behind a lot of the story. We have Josie Trinidad. You're going to learn all about her and some D23 deets that Stephanie and I got. And we here in our Dame Den at Empire's Comics Vault, Sweet K will be...
Sweet K.
Them K's. We'll be talking about all of that sweet, sweet Disney trivia that you can excite your friends about and Easter eggs that will last you well till next Easter.
I mean, let's talk about how fantastic this production team did.
Oh yes,
man.
That is a whole other.
That's a beast. It's a beast of a beast. That's not even a wee beastie.
Yeah, that's a beast.
That's a beast.
When the trailers say from the team that brought you Zootopia, this is 100% the team that brought you Zootopia. There are so many names on here that worked in a lot of stuff in Zootopia that did a lot of heavy lifting in this film as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk to me about that, Jody. Get it?
Oh yeah,
get it. I know you want. I know.
Or Josie.
Josie. So we got
Sorry,
Josie.
I was going. My brain went Jody, and then I got really excited because Ming-Ju Helen Chen is in that, and I'm just like, "You're my connection to comic books. I love you."
That's fair. So we have the Jodie Benson of it all, but we have Josie. So Josie Trinidad, and it's very interesting for me. I feel like she is, like we're watching a future Disney legend kind of come into her own. Mm-hmm. She's very much going to be, I hope, an animation Imagineer. So Josie Trinidad has been the co-head of story for Zootopia, and she's the co-head of story for Wreck-It Ralph, and she also did writing for it as well, and she did some side voices. So Josie stands out in particular. If you are a netizen of YouTube yourself, you can actually look up Imagining Zootopia. It is actually a documentary that Disney somehow approved for Fuse Network to make about the production of Zootopia.
Cheese and crackers.
Yeah. And you can...
Yeah. Keep going. It's crazy.
You can see the trials and tribulations that movie went through in terms of following a plot line that was nearly incomprehensible to really follow and very, very messed up with like shock collars on predators.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh
and they went with that for years until about a year before the Zootopia that we know came out. And when they finally scrapped that idea and started working on the idea of doing an allegory for people of color and people who are in repressed minorities, a lot of people, there's actually video of them in the storyboard room talking over the stories, and there's men on that panel that are saying, no, this is too upfront, people won't understand it. And Josie is very verbal about, my son needs to see this, kids need to see this, this is a way for children to understand this. And Josie had such a hard hand in that, in Zootopia being what it is, and talking about the things that it did, that it's hard not to see her influence in this movie.
Oh yeah. Like there's so many spaces for it. And Zootopia in and of itself, it was literally for 7 months the go-to movie in my house, and I have no qualm with that. And it's, everybody needs to see it. We didn't get a heavy tap to parents in this. We got a little bit of a tap, which is the sudden adoption of 15 children. Way to go, Felix and Calhoun. We love you. And the wow, I wish every parent heard that. That's a secret to parenting. And I was like, I love you guys, but this is terrible. Don't do this to me. Taking a small child to watch this movie, and this you could see in relation. For now, since you told me, being able to look and go, I see where she came in and just was like, take some of this, like touch. No one can see me anyway. Well, I'm just like stroking the air with the magic that is Josie. And then it's stunning. I mean, Steph, you had mentioned it too, that there was somebody on the production team that you were just like, yeah.
Oh, this is the same person. I also watched that documentary, and it's just really amazing where Zootopia went from, but also when you read, IO9 released an article that talked about the trouble that they had doing this sequel too, where they originally were going to go for a concept where they were Vanellope and Ralph were going to go to the internet, and then one of them, and it switched between which one, would lose themselves to internet fame, and then the other friend would have to like bring them back home, essentially. So kind of a very different, not as, I think, relatable storyline. It, you know, instead of like letting your friend be and grow, it's like, no, come back.
Oh,
So
that's more of a story of addiction. That
Yeah.
doesn't really help.
Yeah, and so I'm really glad that they had people that were like, no, let's tell something more meaningful than that, or, you know, more relatable, because I don't think everyone, you know, it's like one of those things where in a TV show where one friend becomes like Hollywood famous, but it only lasts for an episode because everything has to go back for the status quo. It's like not relatable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Like that's very well said. I
Mhm.
have nothing after that. That's I'm gonna sit here. Maybe you got somebody else.
I think we have a D23. Do we want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. This will actually shoot right into that.
Okay, get it.
Stephanie and I, we've been friends for a long time, and we ended up going to D23 the last time they had a D23, which is the Disney Mega Convention. It is Walt Disney Company themselves throwing basically their own Comic-Con for all of their IPs, for parks, for Marvel, for Disney Animation,
Legends.
for the Legends, and they show off what they are going to be doing for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to that. It's every odd year. So it was in 2017, the last. And we went to a little panel called the Princesses,
The Power of
the Princess
Yes.
panel. Not a lot of people wanted to go to this panel, but we love princesses. And it was paneled by Aurelie Carvalho, Nikki Nani Rose, Jodie Benson,
The princesses.
and Paige O'Hara. So they were on there and they were being questioned for a bunch of different things, but they actually brought up Mark Henley as well. And Mark Henley is a classic 2D animator. He is also a Disney legend, and he hand animated Belle, he animated Jasmine, he animated Tiana, and he animated Ariel. So he was brought in to Wreck-It Ralph 2 as co-head of animation. So that is part of why the princesses look like they should and talk and move like they should, because Mark Henley knows them inside and out.
Good. I mean, that's... Do you have anything else? You got really excited there for a minute.
well,
Stephanie was like, let me tell you.
Yeah, go for it.
And so part of this panel was really cool. When we went inside, they started like giving us bags and like, put your phones in these bags. If we see you, you will be booted. You know, end of story.
Oh,
so I
shit.
was like, that's kind of weird for them to do that for something where it's just people talking on stage, maybe some old footage, and they're very secretive about the vault stuff. But I was like, maybe they're going to show, because the day before they previewed the Wreck-It Ralph 2 Princesses clip. So in my mind, I was like, they're going to show it to us again. And indeed they did, but it's actually different than what we saw in the movie.
Oh, nice.
So it's like a lot of the same, like that initial scene where she meets them and everyone, like, you know, Cinderella breaks her shoe. All that's pretty similar. But it actually had a different theme to it, where it was like, oh no, we're, you know, they're all, it's kind of talks about how they're all weird, they're not perfect. Like Snow White talks about like, oh, actually I'm nearsighted, I have to have my glasses on or I'm gonna be like, oh, what's that? Oh, and I love that part.
The hand gestures. I wish there was a camera. It was
I know.
beautiful.
And I wish that scene made it in, but I get why they didn't, because it seems like in that one it was going to be more of like, this is the scene, they're in it, and that's it. Whereas in the actual movie, they have a much bigger role to play. So we got to see that, and that was really cool. And we actually got to see them like all talk about their feelings of reprising those roles, and it was really, really cool. And also, do you want to tell them about when we were on the show floor?
Yes.
What happened?
So post seeing that, it was amazing. We also sat behind Aurelie Carvalho's mom.
Oh, yeah.
And she was just so emotional because everyone adored her. But on the show floor, they have different big booths, and they had one big booth specifically for Walt Disney Animation, and they had the Wreck-It Ralph statue, and it's actually Ralph and Vanellope. Now that we know, I've seen the movie, it's Ralph and Vanellope standing on the router, getting ready to go into the internet.
Yeah.
So we were technically in the router to the internet.
You're like, I'm famous on the internet.
So I'm famous on the internet. But when you walk around, there's actually cast members or booth people talking to you, and if you want pictures with the statues, they'll take pictures for you. What you don't realize unless you sit there and talk to a person rather than just giving them your phone, taking the picture and leaving, they are actually the animators that work for the Walt Disney Animation Studio. And the woman woman that took our picture in front of the Ralph and Penelope statue was one of the animators for the movie. And the movie's scene, like she said previously the day before, this princess scene had just been released, and a lot of press people were already canning it. They were like, oh, clearly this is Disney showing off shoddy animation and just trying to sell their product. She was so apologetic and was just pleading with us to believe that the movie was going to be good. And we knew it was early footage. It was okay. We had to like reassure her that we knew that this movie was going to be great. But it kind of made me really sad that like you really think about, again, comments.
Oh, yeah.
And like online bullying. People worked on these things. They might not be like perfect, like, you know, Justice League, but people worked on them. People worked on them and they put their heart and souls into them. And it was, we were faced with that someone was reading all of these reviews and then had to work on the floor with people who wrote these things about them.
And maybe even talking about it while she could hear it, or like, you know, pointing at the statue and saying mean things. Like, we don't know. But there's just, you know, just one of those things where just go through life and maybe try to be a bit, you know, more observant and kinder about what you're saying.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's, firstly, they have animators there at the booth. That's a spectacular opportunity to just talk to an animator if you have any questions. Like that's one of those things. Don Bluth was here at SACCON a couple of years ago, and I just wanted to sit there and be like, so I have questions. Just tell me.
I have so many questions for Don Bluth.
Tell me how we figured out this whole Thumbelina thing. I know Jodie was great, but can we talk about the hair twirl, like the hair twirl when she laughs? It's one of my favorite. Anyway, I have a thing for Don Bluth. And it's so stunning that they did that, but also that you guys were like, look, we understand. And I think that made more of an impact to her, even if it was, you guys aren't at the time, you weren't pressed.
Yeah, we were not. You're just two randos.
but you're honest, earnest fans. And I know that on some days that means more to somebody who's just doing the work than somebody in press going, I like what you did. You're doing such a great job. And you're just like, no, it's going to be great. We're excited about this. Please don't stop. And that says for anybody dealing with any type of insecurity, which is everybody, let's be honest, we all have insecurities. It's a wonderful reminder of the humanity in all of us.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's something that the movie touched on very, very well, is everyone has that small shred of an insecurity in them. That's why the virus was a thing. With Vanellope, it was like trying to find her place, but also her pixlexia. Even though she was, you know, no longer a glitch, she still has it. And they kind of play it up that when she gets very nervous or gets very frazzled, her pixlexia goes off.
Oh, yeah. I also love that it has a name.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's why she had the 30%. So Arthur is the name of the insecurity virus, which also looks like, if I'm gonna make this reference now, it looks like the weird automaton, like swinging eye in Flight of the Navigator. If anyone remembers that old school Disney movie. Yeah, right? Because it kind of looks like it, but he looks a little more Eye of Sauron. I'm okay with that. We can swing both of those. Hey.
It's like if that, the Eye of Sauron, and then like the Matrix little like octopus thingies.
Yeah.
They all had a baby.
All had a baby.
All had a baby named Arthur. So it was, her insecurity was at 30%. And that's when he found it. But you have to think, she also talked herself down. She changed tone. She went from like straight white to like trying to slowly get her color back. And it pointed out that it wasn't just our two main characters, but when it was scanning for insecurities, everybody else wasn't actively showing it. And so it was kind of that mess. But also he was scanning garbage cans. So I don't know how smart Arthur was in that regard, if he was doing that. So what did we love about this film? And that the question of the hour, because you guys have sat through this puppy for a bit.
Yeah.
And we just love it.
Other than my wife Shank.
I mean, why do you talk about our wife Shank?
Oh, our wife Shank. So,
are you in this place called
Slaughter Race? Gal Gadot did a fantastic job in this movie. I would say that she's definitely my love in this movie, other than her character being my wife. But her voice work in this film is so dynamic.
It's so stunning.
It's so stunning, and she clearly rocks it as Wonder Woman. But I am very much I'm an auditory learner, so voice work in general is such a big thing for me, and she really rocked that mic so hard. And she sang in this movie.
Yes.
She sounded good.
She sounded
too.
good. So technically, she might be a Disney princess. I'm
She
just
is
saying.
so sad.
She sang. So, you know,
She
and technically was the
sang.
queen of Slaughter Race.
She was no just princess. She was a queen.
She was a queen.
Holla.
Oh.
And I loved her. I loved the musical parody in general.
Shout
the
out to Alan
princesses.
Menken.
Shout out to Alan Menken. The only person who can parody Alan Menken is Alan Menken.
Which is something they did in Enchanted. He also wrote the princess parody song because they actually called him up and were like, hey, we need someone to parody you. And he's like, why not I parody myself? So they called him back up, and it's amazing.
It is. What about you? What did you love?
I would say I was gonna say the Alan Menken parody song, but I'm gonna say
You still can.
I know I can't.
We're all on that train of like, we love you.
I think the princesses getting to do like a Final Fantasy-esque superhero team up was really great, and also I haven't been able to find it on like online yet. I hope they post it. There is a song that plays, and it's a medley of like all the princesses' main songs. So it goes.
They do the open at Oh My Disney.
No. So when they're doing all like when they're trying to save Ralph, so it's whenever that princess is doing something. So it has Moana's song, and then it goes into Part of Your World, and then it goes like Let It Go, and all that. So it has like little notes of each, but it's blended together.
It's
really
very
nice.
fast, and I will say this: I did not realize that happened in that scene.
It's called A Big Strong Man in Need of Rescuing.
Oh, thank you.
Hey.
I didn't realize it was happening in that scene because I was so in awe and freaking out that the princesses were doing a Final Fantasy Ultimate.
I love that because we had the Moana open and then it's da 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 da.
Oh, yeah.
And then it rotates into another one and you're like,
Yeah. So it's all of the princesses coming together, and then it's just really cool to see them all interacting because this is a company that for the longest time refused to let artists working with them portray them interacting together, and I think they're finally getting to a point where this is a test for them to maybe do a project where they do interact, which will be really great.
oh yeah. I mean, it's stunning. There's no way. Like I'm just gonna come out and say it. I love you, Alan Tudyk. That melted me. We talked about it a little bit prior before we started casting, but what I loved Alan, especially Alan Tudyk. Not just our wife, Shank. She's gonna get like one of those more rainbows. He was Knowsmore. He was the search bar. He was the egghead at the search bar. And the first time we meet him, right before Vanellope and Ralph interact with him, the woman shows up and he's like, oh, so what are we looking for today? And she's like, I'm searching for child's ballet tight size small. And he's like, oh, little Natalie is going to try ballet. Hope it lasts longer than soccer. And it was this great, very sweet, and also slightly alarming notion that your search bar knows you and knows who you're searching for. And it's one of those extensions, and it was this nice little tip of the hat. And after seeing him in, as King Candy, it was great to have this little redemption space. Also that Hey showed up, so I wonder if he gets a double feature.
Most likely.
Possibly.
Because he might have got that double tap. But I've always loved Alan Tudyk and his voice work, and it was so wonderful to see that he ends up being a safe haven. And the reason that he connects so well with Vanellope is that she's polite.
Yeah.
That's his thing. Like the internet, nobody else is polite, but she was polite, and he remembers that. And he's like, I'll keep you safe, and then throws books at Ralph.
Yeah.
I'm like, and the ladder.
It almost reminds me of if you've worked retail. Like you'll know that like you're expected, especially if you have a business where they expect you to like see these people a lot or every day sometimes, especially like in food and all this other stuff. They expect you to get to know these people. And these are people that like maybe they know something about you or maybe they care. I mean, they probably, so you come to know these people and they may not care about you, but then you have these people that are like polite and talk to you. And you'll be like, I like you. Yeah, essentially. So it's just, I get that. I can feel knows more when he's like, this child was polite. I would die for this child.
I would die for Vanellope. I would die for Vanellope.
In his tiny little hat.
Yeah.
All right, so what do we want to see next? What do we want to see next from Disney Animation or from this property in particular? Because this property was a beast, let's be honest. It came a swinging, not just with the Kling Kong references, but it was so jiggity jam-packed. And I said jiggity. Yes, I did. With just stuff. And I wanted to point out, and I didn't know if you guys saw it, but in Slaughter Race, there was kaiju everywhere.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
And I was just like, is this a hint? Should we... Are we looking for some kaiju? Do I get a kaiju movie coming up right quick? Disney Animation?
Oh.
Because we were trying to figure it out because of the tap.
To be fair, I feel at the time that they were working on this production, Gigantic was still possibly going to be a thing.
Yeah.
So they either were using the assets from Gigantic or those were going to be characters in Gigantic.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they shelved it. So for my answer to that question, I want to see Gigantic. That didn't happen, but I would want to see Gigantic.
I mean, there's also the unnamed Disney Toon movie.
Yeah.
So we don't know what that's going to be probably till this year, or next year rather.
When we get to D23 and we're sitting there going, ah.
I guess what I'm interested is in seeing because there's a lot of things like Pixar, I think, is a bit more obvious where their shorts are definitely tests for things that they want to do. Mm-hmm. Like if you watch Lou, they used like the motion of that kind of lost and found creature, like expanding and weaving and all that
parts.
They used that, I think, for practicing for Elastigirl, because she was way more dynamic in this, and probably also in Coco with how the skeletons moved. So they definitely do stuff where it's more testing, whereas I think Disney also does that, but they're a little less overt about it, unless they put out just a short. So I'm just kind of curious to see if this princess thing goes somewhere, because I think they've nailed down, like, here's how they look in 3D. This looks very good. People responded very well to it, so I'm just kind of curious to see if they'll do a project where they interact.
That would be... I would love to see it besides Princess Story Time or Princess Sleepy By Time, where we read to each other while we're going to bed. Help us all. So what did we dislike? I mean, we touched on it a little bit while we were swinging. We talked about spots in the compendium of this internet where we're like, you missed that button. I did not appreciate this button. Like, and we talked especially about what we loved. Dislike for me right off the bat was the ending felt a little flat. And for me, when we're talking about, especially if we're talking about self-care, mental health, shout out to one of my favorite movies, Ready Player One, where there's a blurb H says that is completely improv, and it's self-care is important. And I like to just go, I'm quoting a movie now. I'm not just saying things and telling you self-care is important. But that his self-care is sitting there after he gets off the phone with Penelope, and he's just sitting there and he does the watching the sunrise, takes a breath, and he sits there and he gives himself a moment of meditation. Felix comes by and he goes, are you okay, Ralph? And he goes, yeah, I will be. And I understand that yes, self-realization, I will be okay. Today is my day, rise to the occasion. But I was like, bro, but you still need to go see somebody. Yeah. Like, you're going to hurt people. And even if you are slightly engaging with other people, you're going to collapse at some point. You need to go out. Also, that it made my super insecure and needy friend suddenly text me and go, are we okay? And I am not joking. I had four people go, I just saw Wreck-It Ralph. Are we okay? And I was like, oh my gosh, you connected way too hard with Ralph, which is good because people are being aware, but it gave no finality for those people who are like, I feel like Ralph.
Yeah.
It gave them no space. It gave them no outlet besides Noah's Mark going, put everybody in counseling.
Yeah.
Ooh, pretty.
Well, and I kind of feel I'm definitely on that train. I think that was definitely a sign of they were going in a different direction with the story for the longest time. They were too married to that idea. And then they kind of got slapped out of it very quickly. And then they had to write a story very, very quickly and make it make sense. And they did for the most part, but they missed those beats that would have made it a fully comprehensible story. And that's why I personally give it like an 8. Yeah. A 7.58, because it's really, really a fun romp and it's such a good movie to watch and it's definitely a must see. but they didn't follow through with that end bit, and it's very much lacking. I almost feel like they should have done, and they could have done like a joke, but it could have been like a Marvel callback to have Ralph being like, and that's how this story ends, laying on a couch, and he's like just laying outside of Nosemore's bar. Aww. And Nosemore's like, I know, buddy, but like, what are you doing now?
Or even like, I can't have you here, I'm working.
Yeah, essentially doing the whole Tony talking to Bruce thing with Ralph and Nosemore. And I think that would have been really cute, but also would have been like, you can get help. You can talk to people about this stuff. And they didn't do that. Or even following through with like, yes. And like, yes, having talked to Ralph about the internet stuff. And him being her baby. Which I shipped that. I shipped that so much. So cute. And I really wanted them to follow through with that and maybe being a relationship. And it didn't, unfortunately. So...
It's all about that burn pie life.
Yeah. And so that's definitely my dislike there is you can see the seams. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Zootopia, the team was able to rip out the old stitching and restitch something new and made a new garment and you could barely see the stitchings and the seams. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Wreck-It Ralph 2, you can see the seam work.
Yeah.
I would say that's kind of my biggest thing is I feel there's just some missing scenes there in regards to like the don't read the comments or just with the ending, just maybe some follow through with like other characters or like just showing that Ralph himself is like keeping these connections to characters from the internet too would have been really cool. Especially with like maybe Yes is like, all right, your viral fad is done, but you got a mind for this. I need your consultation. Like just something like that cool. Where it's just like him going out there and like connecting outside of, I guess, the things that he's always done essentially, like kind of branching out.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been fantastic for him to show that he'd grown the relationships. See, they talked about like every Friday now we go into a different game. That's great, but you're still staying in your bubble. Mm-hmm. Like, if he had brought Fix-It Felix out to the internet, or brought Calhoun would have shot everything. It would have been so amazing.
And all the pop-ups did.
Yeah. Just have dinner with Spamly every Wednesday.
She would have
punched, what was his name? The
Gordon.
weird one. Gordon.
She would either collected him or shot him or punched him. She was so weird but so good. I loved just his like
just in his weird
his arm just
the one growing, long arm.
Yeah. growing.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so final thoughts. We know you got an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, 8 out of 10. I love this. I loved this movie so much. It didn't hit, like I said, the emotional beat that would make me cry like the first one did. Mm-hmm. But I loved this natural progression of it. I think it's a great story that people should see. And like you said, that people saw it and definitely reacted to it and really made them like reflect back on their life. And even the Kling Kong stuff, even though that scene is very disquieting, it's purposefully disquieting. And that's why I really, really love it. It makes you think about stuff. And I think that's why it kind of hurts me that they didn't follow through with that, with Ralph's development, because it almost feels, also, if you think about it, that Ralph is kind of like an allegory for like an older person in like a world full of younger people. Mm-hmm. And he's learning more about himself and that he can continue to grow, even though he's 30 plus years old, around like 60-year-old games, he can still grow. And he can still be a really cool character, a really cool person. Yeah. And I wish that they had followed through with that.
Oh yeah, I'm solid for that. I would probably give it. I'm right around the same space, maybe an 8.2 to an 8.4. The emotional nuggets were not as deep as I needed them to be. This was a fun romp. It did not feel as long as I thought it was, which is always great. There's so many Easter eggs. It's so jam packed with everything. The voice acting is so well done. It feels like a really good meal, but it's not like Thanksgiving of Disney animation movies.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave me sated and just like, I don't need any more right now. It was enough to get me, okay, I can get to dinner. Like I had a really good brunch And I'm solid until like maybe midnight where I'm going to need a snack.
Snack.
Snack. But
Snack.
I loved...
You mean Shank.
I mean Shank. So much Shank. Oh, Shank. Oh, there's so much Shank. I definitely recommend people go to see it. I know that my oldest really connected with the long-distance friendship, which we kind of talked about towards the end with Ralph and Vanellope, him finally learning to let go and let her reside in Slaughter Race. She immediately asked to call her best friend. I knew she was going to do that on my first viewing. She loves her best friend, but they do not go to the same school, and they each have separate dreams, but they don't try to monopolize each other. And she understood long before this movie that best friends do not have to exactly like the exact same thing and move in the exact same crowd to be the best friends. So she just called her. Also, she called her on a payphone, so I was really excited. Found a working payphone, called her. So she called her best friend and told her that she'd seen Wreck-It Ralph and she wanted to take her to see it. And then she just spent an hour talking about how her day was and all of these other things. And so 8.2 to an 8.4, it's a great opportunity for you to have dialogues and to start reflecting on, hey, maybe if you feel a little bit like Ralph, you might need to see somebody.
Or just reach out and talk to a buddy.
Yeah.
A couple of buddies.
A couple of buddies
would be good. Stephanie, how you feeling?
I would say I would agree with the whole 8 thing. I would say the original was probably a 9, and this one's kind of an 8. Like, it doesn't quite go the distance.
Oh.
But it gets really, really close, and I do appreciate that it does deal with the themes of, like, letting your friends kind of soar, or even, like, you know, if you're a parent and your kid is, like, going off to college, kind of accepting that they're going to be doing things, maybe moving away from you. It doesn't mean that you guys aren't, you know, family or friends. It just means that life is taking you in 2 different directions, and that's okay, and it deals with that in a much more, you know, I guess, better way, and more adult, realistic way than trying to be like, and we'll be best friends forever. Boop, ba-doop, ba-doop, boop.
And they were not. And they were...
Yeah.
Whap.
Yeah, more of like, it's gonna hurt when this happens, and it's probably gonna continue to probably be like lonely and hurt, but in the end, it's best for both of you to pursue what you guys both want, even if those are different things.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be our nail. That might be our nail in the router. Thank you so much, you guys, for sticking around. We loved, very, very equal high love. Not the highest, but we equally high loved Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. We suggest you go ahead and take an opportunity to go see it. If you enjoyed listening to us, we are currently located on the iTunes and the Podbean? I think it's
That's the program that puts it on the iTunes.
Yep, it's on the iTunes.
But it's on the YouTubes as well, under the Capeless Crusaders YouTube channel. And the Capeless Crusaders, if you look on iTunes, it's in their little podcast episode list.
Because they are our brothers in arms for a Lady Dame podcast. And also we want to give a shout out to the Crack in the Vault team.
Yes.
We love you guys, and we know we all share the same home down here at Empire's Comics Vault, located 1120 Fulton Avenue, Sweet K.
Sweet K.
Stop in and visit mostly Minnie's crazy Uncle Ben. He'd love to come have you down. Come pay a visit. Touch some pugs. Gently. Two finger.
Gently. They're old.
Rolling. Oh gosh. But of course, if all else fails and you need to find us on the internet, I am Amy. You can find me at iJaneURobot on all of the social medias. To my right, we have
Stephanie, and you can find me at Dame of the Galaxy on Instagram. And over there, we have our lovely Minnie.
Hey guys, I'm Herminia, but again, you guys can call me Minnie, and I am Egg Sauce, that is EG Sauce, on that there Instagram.
Yes, so just remember, geeks in distress.
No need to light the signal.
We're always on patrol.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Have fun on the internet.